What is going on, YouTube? It's been a little while, but I am finally back at it, making some custom cars and making some videos. A huge thank you to everybody that has continued to support the channel since I've been away, and who's gone over to my Instagram page and shown some love over there. Much appreciated. Working on another custom today, and today I'll be working on, oh yeah, the Hot Wheels Vairy 8. Check this thing out. Very cool casting. This is based on the Chevy Corvair. Chevy produced the Corvair from 1960 to 1969. Hot Wheels produced the Chevy Vairy 8 from 2003 to 2012, and it was designed by Mark James. There hasn't been a whole lot of these released. I think in total there's only about 18 that have been released from 2003 to 2012. And pretty cool. One of the cooler castings, I think. This one right here was the first variation of the Vairy 8 released in 2003. Came out in the first editions with the 5-spoke wheels, and the first Hot Wheels to have the tiny wheels on it. Check those things out. These things are super small. It's got a metal base and a metal body. This is actually based on the Late Model Chevy Corvair, which was produced by Chevy from 1965 to 1969. A very underrated car in my opinion. A cool little detail on this car, if you can see it, says Ralph's Ride. That's a little ode to Ralph Nader. Unfortunately, you can't think of Corvair without thinking of Ralph Nader. In his little book where he said the Corvair, speaking of the early model Corvairs, was unsafe at any speed. There were only a couple pages in this book, but everybody focused on his statements about the Corvair, which, in my opinion, very unjust and a really awesome car that Chevy did a lot with. Let's take this thing apart and see what we got going on here. So we only have one post, and it looks like there's a little tab that holds the rear end in. So let's drill that out. To drill out the posts, start off with a 9/64 drill bit and just go slow with a moderate amount of pressure. Just like that. One of the benefits of having a metal base, it can be a little bit easier to drill these posts out, as you don't have to worry about damaging the plastic. Looks like that's all drilled out. Let's take this thing apart and see what we got. Pretty cool looking interior there. And check that out. Corvairs were rear engine vehicles, much like the Volkswagen, but a little more similar to the Porsche. They pretty much had a very similar engine to what the Porsche had, which was a flat 6. This Vairy 8, although being Hot Wheels, has a V8 back there, which is what people used to do to hot rod these things. They'd pull out the old flat 6 and throw a V8 in the back. Tiny little car with huge power equals quite a ride. Looks like it's all one piece and just comes out like that. There you go. It's all taken apart. I think what we're going to do, I'm not a huge fan of these tampos. I think we're going to just take those off and use the original color that it is. Kind of like the metallic, and I think it's going to work well with what I have planned. To remove these tampos, all I'm using is a dry erase marker and going over the tampos. Should remove them fairly easily. Use this a couple times on a few of my builds. Sometimes it's easier just to remove the tampos and use the paint that's already on these Hot Wheels. Typically, if you have one of these and you just do a nice clear coat over it, it really makes that paint pop. Let's let that sit on there for a little bit and we'll be right back. If you want some more information about Corvairs, head on over to Facebook and go to the Corvair Owners Group, or go online to www.corvair.org. So I've been working away on this little Corvair for a little bit, trying to get these tampos off, and I've had some success. Tampo on the roof came off pretty well, and tampos on the hood. Looks like it got most of it. Having a hard time though with this passenger side tampos. For whatever reason, they don't want to cooperate. So, same with the driver's side. It's come off, but not really to my liking. So I'm going to try something a little bit different. Oh, finally, all the tampos are off. Took a little extra doing. Those tampos were on there really good, so pretty impressive for Hot Wheels, actually. I've usually had no problem getting these tampos off with the dry erase markers, but looks like the citrus strip did a great job and didn't damage the clear coat on here at all. So that's good. It is a little rough in spots, so I'll probably go over it with some polish before I clear it again and all that. But there you go. Now we have a blank canvas to work with here. I wanted to show you guys real quick what a little bit of clear coat does to these Hot Wheels paint jobs. Look at that. Obviously I've put the decals on there and I'm trying to keep it in focus, but a little bit of clear on these Hot Wheels paint jobs and it really brings out the color in them. Very nice. As the paint dries on the body, let's take a look at this interior. It's actually got some decent details in there, especially for a Hot Wheels casting. And I think I might actually take a stab at detailing some of this a little bit. I went over the dashboard and the interior with Krylon Color Max metallic aluminum. Then I went back over the dash with Duplicolor Metalcast Blue. As the dashboard's drying, I'll take a look at this interior a little bit. I want to do a little bit of details on this engine, and I noticed it just comes apart, which is pretty cool. That'll help paint it, and it just so happens I have some Chevy orange laying around, so I think I'm going to try and paint this engine and then do a little detailing on these carbs that are on here, all 8 of them. But yeah, let's give that a shot. So to protect the rest of the interior from getting paint on it, when I paint this engine, all I used was some Glad Press and Seal. This stuff works great for trying to keep paint off of other parts you don't want it on. It's got a tacky side on one end and it can be stretched and pulled, and for the most part works a little bit better than tape. But for finer detailed spots and clean lines, I'd definitely go with some painter's tape, but for this, I think it'll get the job done. So, let's get to painting. And check that out. I think it turned out pretty good. Add a few more details here, and I think we are just about good to go. Alright, well, I think it is finally time to put this all back together. I didn't do anything to the glass. It's in fantastic shape, so I just decided to leave it alone. And for the interior, I added a few more details to the engine. I want to start adding a little bit more details to the customs I do, and I figured this was a good place to start. It's kind of cool bringing out some of the highlights and everything of the engine and working with the dash a little bit. So, pretty cool. I don't know how well it's going to be seen once it's in the car, but still fun to work on. Did a wheel swap, added some wheels that I got from treads164.com. Very cool. I actually ordered several wheels from there, and you'll be seeing them on some future builds. I also did a couple highlights for the front splitter and everything. So let's get this all put back together. All right, I got it all put back together, so let's see how it all turned out. Oh yeah, check that out. I was really happy with the blue paint I used. It actually matched the decals very well, and really happy with the way it turned out. Very cool, and you can actually kind of see the engine in there, which looks really nice. I'm really happy with this. Unfortunately, it doesn't spin. I wasn't able to find wheels small enough to go on the front, and I initially tried to have the same size wheels on the front and back, but it just didn't look quite right. So I just went with kind of how it was originally, and I'm really happy with the way it came out. I think it's a pretty fitting tribute to the car that was the Chevy Corvair. Let's go take a few more looks at this thing. Here's what we started with. A fresh out of the package Hot Wheels Vairy 8 with some tempos that, in my opinion, needed to be changed. And here's what we have now. A little Chevy Corvair, nice little tribute to the Yenko Stingers of old. So we all know about the 427 Yenko Copo Camaros made by Don Yenko and the Yenko Novas, but long before those cars, Yenko was cutting his teeth on these Yenko Stingers. Chevy dealer Don Yenko established his racing credentials in the late 50s, driving Corvettes in SCCA production racing, but when Carroll Shelby's Mustangs and Cobras began crushing the competition in the mid-60s, Yenko followed Shelby's lead and used his factory connections to produce the Yenko Stinger. Tired of finishing behind all the Mustangs in 1965, Don Yenko set out to find a new platform for his race cars. Tired of the Corvettes, he decided to go with the Chevy Corvair. In early December of 1965, Chevy delivered 100 white 4-speed 140 horsepower Corsas to Yenko, and his team went to work. They removed all Chevy and Corvair badging, and specifically with its air-cooled rear-mounted flat 6-cylinder engine, which was pretty unique in America at the time. The car wasn't for everyone, but Yenko saw some great potential in the car. Every 1966 Stinger was white with blue stripes. Yenko offered 4 stages of tune for the Stinger. Stage 1 bumped the horsepower up to 160, Stage 2 to 190, Stage 3 to 220, and Stage 4 bumped horsepower up to 240, and that was without supercharging or increasing displacement, and it was only for the track. Only cars with the Yenko Stinger serial numbers were allowed to compete in the D production class. Yenko did offer the engine tune kits to his customers, though. Yenko sports cars built about 115 Stingers between 1966 and 1969. There were about 30 customer cars that also received the package and received a Yenko serial number. The last Stinger that was built was in 1969 and was for Goodyear, as they needed to test some tires for Ford of Australia, and the only car capable of doing it was a Stage 4 Stinger. A very interesting car that I haven't even been able to scratch the surface of. I hope you enjoyed this build, and we will see you on the next one.